Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and I am joined by my good friend, Aram. Aram in Toronto.
Aram in Toronto. I'm here.
Yeah. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I am getting some good rest after this long, strange Warriors season, and I'm excited about the draft lottery. This is like a long time coming. I've been wanting this. I've been circling this date for a couple months now.
The draft season, it's Warriors Christmas. If you're an old head Warriors fan, it's Warriors Christmas.
Yeah.
I am so excited for draft season.
Like this used to be our playoffs, and I feel like this is the most exciting time. You know what I mean? Outside of the finals, like this is the best.
Well, it's I think it was always like lots of people in sports talk about like you just want hope, and this was the only place we could have hope, right? Mm-hmm. It's like and whatever chance. And so I think towards the end of this year where it was kind of like man, like, do I want them to make the playoffs, or I want them to have the 14th pick and a 0.9% chance at Cade Cunningham, and it's like, wow, I really can't tell. So it's I feel kind of guilty for feeling like this was the best case scenario. Just it's like, hey, we got 2 picks and we still have a chance for number 1. I feel guilty about that because, maybe they would have been served by like having Poole and Wiggins have experience playing the Jazz in a series where they're trying to match up and take you out of a series and those kinds of things. The cauldron of the playoffs, but this is also fun too.
Yeah. I mean,
I love this.
Growing up, when the Warriors were not making the playoffs, like lotteries in general, like some people could say that they're kind of for suckers, right? Because you put all this money into lotteries, like California State Lottery or something. I've known people to like take $5,000 and then put in the lottery and then come out with nothing. You know what I mean? And if like this, like the NBA draft lottery, it is not for suckers per se, but it's like, oh man, when the Warriors sucked, it just keeps you hanging on, right? It is the thing that gives, like you said, hope. I mean, I said that a bunch throughout the season when it was all like said and done that Clay was out. It's about the hope for next season, right? And we had our formative years just being trained to watch the lottery and wait for the lottery and be excited for the lottery and get home in time to watch it. Right. And I mean, it was the best.
Well, I was so into the lottery that I used to do a DIY lottery. Like now we have Tankathon where you can just like click it. But I did a DIY lottery where after I learned how it worked, like, the worst team gets 1 ping pong ball. The worst team or the best team gets 1, the worst team gets 11 or something like that. So I cut up pieces of paper, or I shredded them and I balled them up, and then I put them in a hat and I just like shook them around. Right. And I would do like mock lotteries and then write it down and then do a draft. But it was a lot of work. And
how many balls?
I think that? There was like 11 teams in the lottery. So, 11 and then 10 and then 9 and whatever that adds up to. I think it was like 66 or something like that. But then I only shook the hat and ran the simulation like only a couple of times. Like, why did I do all this work of like crumpling them up? I think though, it's like, I don't think I got the lottery results that I wanted. Like clearly in my shake the hat simulation, the Warriors didn't get the top pick. Which like, I know
maybe the paper wasn't weighted evenly. You know what I mean? Like
it was not frozen. No, it was not. It was not frozen. No, and it was purely not scientific. So, you're just like, anytime you're searching around, like, where's that Warriors crumpled up ball? But now, like, and I wanted to shout out Tankathon because, like, I don't know who runs that, but it's been a great service this
Yeah.
this entire like spring, and just constantly hitting that button and like trying to get that pick, you know, trying to get like,
Yeah.
let me get Cade, you know, somehow.
I mean, had you heard of that site before this season?
I had, I
Yeah.
think probably last year was
Yeah,
when
yeah.
I first, because you know we were so terrible last year too.
I remember it, and like, but I didn't go to it that often. But early in the season, I mean, when you do like a game by game podcast and you're looking for something to talk about, you know, I think I started looking ahead pretty early, you know, at the Wolves pick, at the draft. And so I started looking at it and I was like, oh man, this looks great, you know, like, cause I would basically go just to the odds page and just look at Minnesota and be like, this is going to be so good for us. And then as the season went on, and I was like, oh, they fired their coach. Oh, Karl Anthony Towns is back. Oh, D'Lo. Well, when D'Lo came back, I was like, oh, okay, they're going to lose. But
Yeah,
then,
that's going to be good.
but then Anthony Edwards played better, and I was like, they have too much talent. And then it started looking worse and worse.
Well, you and Vubang had that ongoing conversation throughout the season too, I think, about like would the Wolves get better? But definitely the Wolves pick was driving my interest in Tankathon. And like I think on my phone, anytime I go to the search bar, like that's the number one thing. That's the top suggestion is Tankathon NBA, which, you know, like I think after June 22nd they're gonna have some major like drop off. But you know, hey, it's like again, it's the Christmas analogy. Like
exactly.
a lot of businesses, like they make most of their business in the Christmas season, right? So
exactly.
Tankathon is doing well right now, I guess.
And I personally don't like do the simulation that often. And I texted you a couple days ago. I went just for the hell of it to see, because maybe they've done this for a while, but I was looking at all the random draft boards to see who everyone was saying the Warriors would get at certain picks and whatever. So I wanted to see what then I ended up on the simulation page, and then I was like, it's like that guy who doesn't gamble, and he's like, well, let me pull the one-armed bandit once. And then I was like, and then I was like, one more. And then on the fifth try, I got the Warriors with their own pick, with the number one, getting the number one pick, and then Minnesota falling into the fourth pick. And so we got that pick. And I was like, holy shit, I am going to be stupidly superstitious as hell. And like, I haven't closed that browser window. It is frozen in time. For some reason,
don't close it until the 23rd.
For some reason, I screen grabbed it as if it was like some momentous occasion. I needed proof.
It is because you know how hard I tried. I that's the reason why it's the top search. It's like I've tried so many times to get that double top five, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that like that's the dream.
Yeah, that's
right?
the best case scenario. 1 in 4.
I mean, when you multiply like the 9% chance for 4 and the like 0.9% chance for number 1, like it's amazing you got that.
Yeah.
So I'm totally happy that you got it and that you took a picture.
But it's
because that means it's possible.
It's weird, right? Because I felt like I had done something with my day. I felt like I had accomplished something. Like it was like the equivalent of, you know, finishing a draft of a screenplay. I was like, I am worthy today of something, you know, like I am going to eat like an ice cream sundae. And yeah, I think Vubang told me once that, because he's also big into Tankathon, and I think he may have said it on a couple episodes ago, but I think the best he got was like 3 and they can't even get the 5th pick. I think it was like maybe like 3 and 4 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was like, how long did it take? He's like, you really want to know? I said, yeah, an hour and a half. Oh man, I hope that was during a Zoom meeting or something. But yeah, no, props to the dudes who came up with that site, and shame on you Aram, for not coming up with that, because you had like the analog version in your room in San Francisco back in the 90s.
I'm actually really annoyed. I am truly annoyed. Like, internet, I don't need to spend any time learning how that works.
This is a big day, like in terms of, the Warriors' future, Timberwolves' future. Yeah. I mean, everybody else's too, but I couldn't care less about the other teams. But like you said to me, yeah, there's that worst case scenario of the Warriors just end up with the number 14 pick and not the Wolves pick, because that means the Wolves get a top 4 pick or top 3 pick, right? And they get probably either Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Suggs,
or Jalen Suggs. Yeah, it's like
Evan Mobley,
and I don't know that means that they'll be a playoff team, but they won't be a lot closer to be one.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is like they won't be a bottom 5 team regardless, and that just means that in a shallower draft, we'll get somebody worse. You know what I mean? So maybe like a Scotty Barnes would be like a number 2 pick next year or something.
Well, I mean, that's one of those things that people talk about this draft and they're like, oh, it's top 5. You really want to get top 5. And that's cool. And knowing that we probably won't get that, but that means that people who may have been top 5 in another year, or if this class didn't have a top 5, that means it pushes people who may have been like a top 4 pick, it pushes them down a little bit. So right. Because we're most likely to get that 6, 7, 8 pick, I've been looking at those people and I'm super excited for some of those. And, there is definitely like the Warriors fan inclination to just be hyped about draft prospects. And like, who knows how these guys are going to come out and show and how soon they can contribute. But definitely that Wolves getting the top 3 pick, that's worst case scenario to me. And not only just because that means it conveys next year, but it also means there's just one fewer asset that the Warriors have to play with, right? Exactly. To trade or develop or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because if they get 8 and 14 or even 6 and 14, it's like, hey, who could they get for those?
Yeah.
With just the 14 pick, it's like, you can, might as well just draft that guy, right? Like, no one's dying for the 14th pick. We were talking about how the lottery was such a integral part of our upbringing. I mean, what's your favorite lottery moment or year or memory or whatever?
I mean, I might conflate the lottery and the draft a little bit, but I'll say first, hopefully my all-time lottery high or draft high will be James Wiseman. We don't know that yet, but hopefully. But I'll say that actually, like last year when we got the number 2, that was like, that was a big relief, because like you wanted to get in as high as possible. But I mean, my definitely, like, for sure, my highest moment was Chris Webber, when we traded for him. I think I didn't have cable back then, but it's for some reason we ended up being at my grandma's house.
Big lottery fan, huh?
Yeah. Well, she had cable. She was a big fan of Chinese soap operas. But for some reason we were at her house on that day. And I think that was what really got me into lottery. I think I had watched the lottery the year before, the draft the year before with Spreewell. But man, when we got Chris Webber, I couldn't believe we got him because he was like the missing piece, right? He and obviously if you were a teenager, if that was your formative years, you loved the Fab Five, right? Mm-hmm. Like and Webber was great. So I was just so hyped for that. So yeah. How about you? What was your like kind of lottery or a draft high?
Oh man, I mean it has to be that, because that was our first, like, we got the number 3 pick, but we ended up with the number 1 pick player, right? And that was awesome. And exactly that, like the Warriors had been whooped by other teams' big men for so long. That was the small ball era, and this was their step forward. And I was a huge Fab Five fan. I was like my basketball team. We all wore black shoes. We wore black socks. We wore well, our the team didn't really have baggy shorts, but we sure as hell pulled them as low as possible.
Yeah,
You know. And so yeah, like I knew all about the Fab Five, and I was a huge college basketball fan at the time, and I love Chris Webber, and the fact that we were actually getting something. And this is like when you're a kid, and the Warriors are like this small little team that never gets any hype in the media machine back then. You're like, whoa, we are front and center. We are going to be like a contender, right? And
yeah.
And we would have been, but
And it was such an interesting team, right? Like they
yeah,
had a couple of veterans, right? They had Mullin, they had Hardaway, and then they had Sprewell coming up, who had just made the rookie team, and Billy Owens, for whatever you feel like feel about him, but it was like a promising team, and it was like the sense of that they're like, okay, we're going for it, and and that was evidenced by them trading the 3 future picks too. It's
yeah,
like, oh yeah, they're really serious about this.
yeah. I mean, we could do a deep dive on that Golden State Warriors team.
I think we have to. We have to.
Do you want to do that now? Or no?
No.
Okay, that's another.
How long you got? Actually, I would like to do some more research on it, actually, to make sure I get my timelines correct.
Yeah, I'm a little like sometimes I'm a little fuzzy like on who came first, but the thing is that I mean I remember because I used to go to games back then, and Sprewell, I was like, because the Warriors were really good. Don Nelson was good at picking like CBA players, right? Continental Basketball Association, right? John Starks, Vincent Askew, Mario Elie, and then pulling Sprewell, who was on the same Alabama team as like Robert Ory and somebody else I forgot. He was basically
there was a wing. Yeah, it was like a small point guard or something.
He was basically the third wheel on that team, and then he became really, really good. I mean, he was just a fun player to watch, and he definitely made losing Mitch Richmond a lot easier, But then if you just think like if you had run TMC and then you just inserted Chris Webber, that would have been awesome. But I know like I'm getting the order of everything like mixed up with Billy Owens and everything, but that is for a later episode.
It is.
I need to be like more I need to like prep myself emotionally and steel myself a little bit more before diving into that. But I mean, other lottery things, I mean, I will tell you this. If the Warriors end up not with a top 5, but with like the number 7, that's a good omen, right? We got Chris Mullin at 7. We got Steph Curry at 7. We got Harrison Barnes at 7.
Yep.
So
I think somebody on Warriors World posted though, the pick that you don't want is 8 because that's had the fewest like all stars or NBA, all NBA team or any accolades. So that's the Jordan Hill pick, I guess. So, so let's hope not for 8. But yeah, totally. Like I'm not expecting that top 5. I mean, if they open 14 and it's not, and we're not there,
oh my God,
I'm going to be running around the block. Yeah, I'll be running around the block. But I'll be happy with like a 7 and 14, 6 and 14.
Yeah, I mean the worst it can be. If the Minnesota pick does convey is 10, right? 10 and 14.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have 8 and 14. I don't care what the history of that pick is. But I remember like when the Warriors got the Mullin pick, I was a kid. And the Warriors stunk. And I was like excited because I was a Georgetown fan. And I was like, does this mean we're going to get Patrick Ewing? And that pick goes to the Knicks. And not only do they not get the top pick, they end up with the 7th pick.
The lottery was whack.
Yeah.
It was like I mean, you hear everybody talk about the frozen envelope. I mean, that was a little bit before my time, so that wasn't in my consciousness, but I know
Yeah.
like reading the history books about that,
Yeah.
and that the fix was in, and they'll insist that it wasn't, but
Well, the
I
funny
mean,
thing
come on,
was,
and then it's also the rules too. Like, how could the worst team end up getting the worst pick in the lottery? I mean, it ended up being good for us with Mullin, but
yeah,
like that's a broken system.
yeah, it was terrible. And the funny thing was, with me being such a huge Georgetown fan, I obviously was not a St. John's fan, and so I didn't actually like Chris Mullin. I
Yeah.
actually hated him because he was very good, and that's when everybody played for 4 years. So I hated him for a while. Yeah, maybe I was too young for all those 4 years, but regardless, I was like, oh god, Chris Mullin. And then it became Chris Mullin, became Mully, and he's still doing broadcasts. And then I actually also was not a Steph Curry fan in college.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I was impressed by what he did, but I was like, this kid's just.
You didn't think it would translate?
I thought he was gonna be like Hersey Hawkins,
Hmm.
and obviously he's greater than that. And then of course, like the rules are a little bit different, which allow him to get off his shot a little bit better. But when we actually got him, though, when we picked him, I was happy because I was like, oh, well, at least this is interesting, right? I mean, because this is so many years later, I'm wiser, of course. And I was like, oh, I didn't like this kid, but I was like, it could be fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't like, duh, we missed Jordan Hill. Like I wasn't like that.
Well, and it also definitely seemed it also felt like we kind of lucked out in it too, that it was kind of, I mean, even like at the time it was like, wait, what? Like the Wolves picked 2 point guards? Like,
Yeah.
what? Like that just that made no sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was like, I was watching this draft like passively, and I was like, what? Really? What? They took Johnny Flynn?
Yeah.
And you know, and then honestly, the Barnes draft, like being here in LA, like I wasn't really paying too much attention, but when they tanked for that pick, I was like, nice,
Oh yeah.
very nice.
Yeah. I was happy about that one.
Yeah.
I mean, and the tank was fully loaded there.
Yeah, I mean,
but so
yeah.
out of these, would you say that the Chris Mullin one was your lottery low?
In terms of lottery,
Or
like
lottery draft?
yeah, dude, lottery draft. I mean, if you're talking draft, no, because Mullen was a great draft pick, but the lows.
But like, I mean, at the moment of the pick, at the moment of the choice,
man.
or the moment of the lottery.
No, because I don't think. I mean, in the this is like 1985, man. So like in the mid 80s, I don't think I cared that much. And also in the mid 80s, I was a huge Lakers fan because you're just getting Lakers and Celtics on TV all the time. So like I was like, oh, come on. Oh well. But the lows are the 96, 97, 98 drafts, I think consecutively. I would say 95, but I thought Joe Smith would be solid, even though I wanted Rasheed Wallace or Stackhouse. But I mean, I think those are the lows because by that point, you knew, especially by the time you got to McGrady, like you knew that, like, hey, KG is pretty good. This high school thing's kind of a smart thing. And then Kobe Bryant, oh, he's pretty good. Oh, Tracy McGrady, oh, you should take him. I really like a Donald Foyle. Like let's if we're gonna get a guy who doesn't have much experience and doesn't really know how to play basketball, let's go with like a plodding 22, 23-year-old instead of like this 18, 19-year-old, like, athletic freak, So I think those were the real low points because it's like the universe just kept kicking me in the nuts, like, oh, great. Here, because it's like the pick right here. So yeah. I don't know. What about
Those
you?
were definitely the ones that like you knew at the time that was not a good. It was not a good pick, and I think that the Epi Udo one, I think it may be 2008 or something like that. Like That was another one that was just like, or maybe it was 2010. I don't know.
Yeah, it was 2010 because Steph was 2009, and then 2010, and then Clay was 2011. But like,
2008 was Anthony Randolph actually.
oh man, oh dude, I believed in that dude. I thought that dude was Lamar Odom, and
so much, yeah.
He was like had all the tools, and I'll just never forget like Monte Ellis yelling at him on the court during like a game on TV, and they like showed him from like a courtside shot, and he was like pissed off yelling at Anthony Randolph because he was like screwing up.
I mean, we were such a shitty team that like you just like so many people's careers were ruined by this franchise, and not just the Warriors, like every franchise, every shitty franchise, but still, it's just like, you know, I mean, good for him for going to Europe and like being a good player over there and making some money, and
yeah,
you know, it's I would say my maybe the lottery low was the Yao Ming year, which I think was 2002. Because like, I mean, I think a lot of people didn't know how Yao Ming was gonna turn out, and you know, they had their doubts, but the consolation would have been Jay Williams, right, the Duke point guard, right?
I remember this,
right?
yes.
And I think we were the worst team that year.
We were,
and it just also like, you know, obviously the Bay Area, like hella Chinese people, like, and Asian people, like Yao Ming would have been awesome. And then we get the third pick out of that, and I would have been like, if we had gotten Jay Williams, I would have been great too, you know. And missing out on that, the marketing, the cultural aspect, like, and he ended up being a great player.
Yeah,
that was so disappointing, and you know, and we never forgave Mike Dunleavy Jr. for that either.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that he's back on staff as a scout, as an executive or whatever, I'm like, what? Why would you do this? And hey, as long as he's been on the Warriors staff, they have not made the playoffs. And they've sucked. And you know, I don't know. He joined after the finals loss.
Yeah.
So,
but apparently he is the one that pushed for Jordan Poole. So maybe there's hope for.
Well, thankfully Jordan Poole has turned out to be impressive and whatnot. But that Dunleavy draft, though, I'll be honest, like, yeah, I definitely wanted Yao Ming, and I don't think it hit me as hard as it hit you, but at least when we got Dunleavy, I really thought he was going to be like the white Lamar Odom, and he's the second person, just like Anthony Randolph. I was like, Lamar Odom, when he was young and he was at Rhode Island, you know, before he became like, you know, more of a Lakers power forward. I mean, you remember how badass that dude was. That dude was like skilled. I thought he could be like a McGrady, Kobe Bryant type, somebody like, because do you remember that era when it was like Kobe was in his prime? It was like, we were always looking for that guy who could like match up with him, like our guy. Like it could have been McGrady. Yeah. We were hoping it'd be Larry Hughes, you know. Gotta catch
it was not.
And not that I thought Anthony Randolph could be Kobe Bryant, but I definitely thought Dunleavy. I would say to people like thinking I knew what the hell I was talking about. That might be one of my worst takes ever, like that Mike Dunleavy is Lamar Odom, the white Lamar Odom. And
you know, I mean, it just shows that like, you know, we're so used to, as Warriors fans, like if you're of a certain vintage, like just hoping on that potential, but then you just don't know how it's going to turn out, right? Like, you know, in the end, after he left, Mike Dunleavy Jr., if you were to look at it objectively, like he ended up being like, you know, a decent role player, and you know, not an all-star, but a contributor to some decent teams, and in some situations, like, and looking at the draft for us this year, like if we could get somebody with that skill set who could be a longtime contributor, like, hey, that'd be great. Yeah.
Franz, is it Franz Wagner?
Yeah, Mo is his brother, but Franz Wagner. Yeah, Franz Wagner. And watching those highlights, I'm just like, I mean, he looks cool. He looks all right, but man, it's hard to shake the Dunleavy feel, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I also think that Dunleavy ended up on a terrible team with a terrible situation, and it's just a terrible organization. We knew that.
Can I put you on the spot though?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
let's say we get the fourth pick, um, and you have a chance between Jalen Suggs and Jalen Green, who you recently found out was part Filipino. Who are you gonna pick?
Oh man,
That
is
he's like your
really
Yao
tough.
Ming. He's your Yao Ming.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not as like for me. I would love to see Jalen Green because just to see what it would be like to have a dude who's part Filipino play in front of a fan
Bay. Can
base
you imagine
that was
that?
so it's full of like a bunch of Filipino like basketball starved people. That would be awesome. Uh, I also think Suggs would just come in. I mean, can you imagine some point in the season if we get Suggs like a second unit of Suggs, Poole, Wiseman, I don't know, Wiggins, whoever else you want to throw in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, that would be just straight up nasty, and those guys could all grow together. So, but I really don't know. I would be happy with either. I think Suggs could help them win now. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like the two guys that could help the Warriors right now are obviously Kate Cunningham and then Jalen Suggs. They could come in and contribute on day one. Jalen Green's game, super raw, he's super skinny, not as raw as Kuminga. Offensively, he's pretty polished, but defensively, but he would just be a guy that you could throw in there as like you could throw him in there with Poole, and you just need offense.
Yeah.
And
go get a bucket. Yeah.
By the middle of the season, I mean, the thing is, his comp for a lot of folks, at least comparing to last year's draft, is Anthony Edwards, right? But Edwards is physically stronger,
yeah,
and more dominant in that respect. So I don't know if he could do what Edwards did this season, but man, I would love to have either. I don't know, man. This is really like it is putting
that's
me
your
on
that's
the
your
spot.
heart versus your head.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, if I got to make a call right now, I will take Suggs.
I will take a Jalen.
No,
not Jalen Johnson.
Yeah. No, who would you take? I mean, you're not Filipino, so you know.
No, but like knowing what it would mean for the Bay and the fans, like it would, and he is a Northern California kid. I mean, Fresno? That's Northern California, right?
Yeah. Central Valley, close enough.
I mean, that's something that is pretty cool, but for now, I don't know. I think I would go with Jalen Suggs.
It's a tough call.
It's a tough call. It would need more scouting.
The thing is,
do some more scouting videos.
The thing is, like, if Jalen Suggs was 6'6" instead of 6'3", we'll see what he measures at. Also, Jalen Green, early on, people were saying it was 6'5", 6'6", but then I was reading it was like 6'4". So, and who knows? These dudes are 19. Maybe they'll still grow a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Either way, we would be fortunate to have either for sure, man. But this is just like a big tease, man, because I just don't believe we're gonna get those.
No, I mean, all of this is going to be moot. I mean, this is all going to be moot. I mean, the other thing is like the most likely situation almost never happens, right? So, I mean, the evening of June 22nd is going to be interesting. Like, but I'm sure I'll be messaging you.
Yeah,
whatever way it goes, it's gonna be like dramatic.
It will be,
yeah. It'll be kind of like down to the end.
If it comes down to like the fourth pick, and it's like who gets the fourth pick, and Minnesota's not on the board yet. I mean, that's going to be insane, right?
I'm gonna be so pissed if Minnesota gets a top 3. I'm gonna be so pissed, and I don't
Yeah.
like Chet Holmgren.
Well,
Watch me eat my words, but
we wouldn't even have a shot at Chet Holmgren unless he gets injured or tanks. But to me, it's like, I mean, now that you bring this up, like, oh man, I got to figure out how to cope with the fact that with the idea that we won't get the Minnesota pick and that we're just at 14 and what this team can do. I mean, basically at that point, to get anything of value for that 14th pick, you have to package it probably to get somebody that you want,
Yeah.
Or you figure out a way if like Oubre wants to go to New York, will they? I mean, New York can just sign him outright. They have so much cap space. So, we'll see. We'll see what would happen after that. I just really hope that they find a couple vets and find a way to get them on the roster. I mean, everybody talks about Olynyk, Patty Mills. I would love either of those guys,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're seeing in the playoffs, and I mean, it's true every year, but it's like, just who's not going to get played off the floor?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and they just need some guys who aren't going to get played off the floor.
Yeah.
And God willing that Clay comes back like at 80% or something like that, and then you're good, right? Like, you just need a few more dudes to like fill in, and then you need a few more dudes who's going to get you through the season too, because with an older roster, and with Clay having to get eased back in, you are going to need some 82 game players. Like, I think, Michael Mulder is a good 82 game player, he'll help you get through the season. 10 minutes a night. Like, you need that. That's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Damian Lee, 82 game
Damian
player.
Lee, all caps.
All caps. If only he knew that should be his nickname. All caps.
All right. I wanted to ask you something.
Yeah.
And I know, so I saw a post or a tweet or something about like, about the big 3, which is starting soon. And it's not, I've only watched highlights. I haven't watched any of the full games, but
Same.
It's expanding. But I remember the tweet was like, it's like former Warriors who are joining the big 3, and it was this long list. And then I was
Rick
like,
Barry.
It said Rick Barry. I know, and I was like, he's gonna play.
It's like he just can't let go.
That's not a good idea. And then I was relieved that he was a coach. But then I was thinking about, I mean, there's a lot of former Warriors in there, but I was thinking about the that 3-on-3 format.
Yeah.
And then since we're talking about drafts, there's only like a few drafts where we drafted 3 players. And the, obviously the most famous one recently is the 2012, which is Draymond, Harrison Barnes, and Festus Ezeli.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know who you think would win, because I thought of another group of 3, which would be 2001, which is JRich, Troy Murphy, and Gilbert Arenas. So in a 3-on-3, I guess, do you want to do big 3 format? So 3-on-3 in the half court?
Sure.
Who would win?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and are we assuming everyone at their peaks whenever those were?
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's say their peak.
Yeah, I would take the 2001. I mean, when they drafted those guys,
too much firepower.
Yeah, too much firepower in the half court. Festus, God bless him, but even his peak was very limited, and there's no open court fast break lobs. So I would take JRich and Gilbert. I mean, Gilbert was a Hall of Famer until he got hurt. That guy was so awesome.
But okay, but I mean, Draymond is also a Hall of Fame defensive player.
Yes, he is. And
right,
but part of his value is like playing this 5-on-5 system, and then also like managing stuff, and I think pick up 3-on-3 big 3 format. It'd be valuable, but not as valuable. It's not like he's orchestrating Festus and Harrison Barnes on like the switches and pick up basketball. I just don't think. I mean, they would be bigger, of course, than the 2001 guys, but I think
I mean, you're
the
basically talking
firepower.
though 2016 Draymond, like the 39% 3-point shooting Draymond. Like if we're talking about peaks, although then you're talking about like Wizards Gilbert Arenas, right?
Yes,
Like shooting from
yes,
40 feet
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So no doubt, Draymond is destined for the Hall of Fame. That's for sure. And but Gilbert, I mean, Gilbert was one of the best scorers in the league. I feel like he's so underrated at this point because he played on such trash teams for the most part, and he had that whole weird like gun thing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and then Jason Richardson, when he peaked, I mean, that guy was an amazing 3-point shooter. And
Yeah.
Harrison Barnes, I mean, he never peaked; he just plateaued. And then you have
Yeah, you could
Festus,
almost
right?
you could also I mean, you might say that this last season was Harrison Barnes' best season.
Yeah, which
You know, like
which
that might be the best version of him.
yeah, which probably isn't as good as JRich's best season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean
And
I think that's the matchup that it would end up. I mean, I think 2016 Draymond against Gilbert Arenas, like I mean, 26 Draymond was a beast defensively.
yeah,
So I think he could mitigate Gilbert a little bit. But it would come down to like Harry B versus JRich, and
Troy
yeah, I think
Murphy,
JRich would win.
the cheap double guy. He's averaging a double. The only other guy besides Kevin Garnett.
Yes. And like stretch four, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I,
Okay, I actually have a wild card here to throw at you, and this was one that I just thought of. Um, it it's not technically a Warriors draft class, because I was thinking like, oh, what would be the best, Warriors draft class, and you'd have to say like the best would be like whatever year Curry was drafted, right? And so that was the only pick that they had that year, but there's two other players who were drafted that year who played for the Warriors later, and so I want to throw them as a 3-on-3 team into this. So it would be Curry,
okay.
uh, uh, Omri Caspi, and Jonas Jerebko.
Wow, you just named the two dudes that they got that were scared to shoot. Are you kidding me?
But you're talking about the best version of them.
Okay, I never saw the best versions. I know Caspi had that career game against the Warriors when he played on the Kings.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
I
as
mean,
much
Steph's
as like
damn good, right?
as much as I mean, that's the thing, right? Like that is tough because Steph, that's so weighted, you know. Um, and how much defense are these
And
guys playing?
well, and they also don't they have the like 4 or 5 point shot in Big Three too?
I don't know. You
I
probably,
think
yeah, I
so.
think so. I think you're
I
right.
think so.
Um, and do they play up to a certain total or score, or is it like a time based
I
clock game?
I want to say it's a score.
Oh, really?
But
Then I mean, it's hard
I don't actually know.
if it's getting to a certain number. And is it like make it take it, or is it?
No,
Okay.
no. You know what? I should have researched Big Three a little bit more before putting it in this
Because if it's
framework.
like if it's basically like the equivalent of 3-on-3 21, make it take it, I will go with
Oh,
a
yeah,
team that Steph is on. Although I would love to see Steph versus Gilbert.
yeah.
You know, that would be insane because going all hibachi was a sight to behold.
And if we're talking about the best versions of them, like a Curry, and if Caspi is shooting and making
Yeah,
shots, that's not bad.
yeah, and Jerebko
You
before
know?
but he tore his Achilles too, right? So like,
Yeah.
um, I'm sure he was a little bit more decent. I mean, I would put him on Troy Murphy. Speed versus speed. That is a good one. I do remember that 2001 draft because I remember Gilbert Arenas at Arizona, and I had no idea he was going to be that good because
No,
he was like,
nobody did.
what was that guy's name? Jason Gardner was the point guard, and Gilbert Arenas
Yep.
was an undersized two guard, and they were annoying, but like, because I wasn't an Arizona fan, but they kind of felt like that typical backcourt that Arizona used to always have. I mean, maybe they still do, but whether it's like Steve Kerr, Matt Muehlbach, or Miles
Miles
Simon
Simon
and
and
Bibby or
yeah,
Jason
yeah.
Terry, I was like, oh, these guys are just that. And then I remember the end of Gilbert's rookie season, they finally decided to play him, and he was really good.
Yeah.
And he was literally one of those guys, because there aren't that many dudes who can take somebody off the dribble with no screen, left or right, and just get to the cup nonstop. And
Yeah.
he had such long arms.
He could finish, and he didn't look like a guy who would be able to beat people off the dribble so easily. And then he would, and then he would finish over people, and he was just like the right size and the right amount of athleticism, and the shot was crazy.
Yeah.
So,
and as a 6'3" guard back then, because now 6'3" guards are so common in terms of scoring guards, back then it was really impressive. And that actually has nothing to do with the lottery, the draft, but losing him, that was like a huge gut punch. Just
totally.
that was terrible. I was so angry. And I was like, I was like, I'm moving to Los Angeles.
Well, they changed the rules. They changed the rules after that, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of how you could sign those types of contracts and sign those types of free agents. So
yeah, give me your take on your current take on James Wiseman.
You know, I was listening to him talking to Monty Poole.
I heard that.
And then Monty Poole asked him, "How would you rate your season?" And he said B+. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that rating, because on the one hand, it's like, you know what? It's good that he feels confident, or, you know, but then I'm also like, that's not an honest assessment. That's not an honest self-assessment. Like, it's not a B+ season, you know?
No.
And that he was like, oh, if I had stayed healthy, it would have been an A. It's like, no, like, but I guess I just have a different rubric, you know? I think though, I think it's important to just, in a way, the knee injury is maybe a good thing, because it just will slow everybody down. He's not going to play, and they got to slow play him when he gets back, because he just needs more time to develop. Like, and also, I think this is something that baseball talent evaluators talk about, that development is not a straight line, right?
Right.
And I think in basketball, it often feels like, oh, somebody pops and then they're just on their way to stardom. And that's how people talk about young players, but it's rarely ever true. Like, most of the time they have their setbacks too. Mm-hmm. So I think that the way that Wiseman's draft and the people around him, especially LaMelo, and, you know, Anthony Edwards was not available to us, but like, people are assuming an upward linear, you know, right, progression, and that's not going to happen for them. Like, LaMelo could shoot 31% from three next year, you know, that's entirely possible. And likewise, just because James Wiseman didn't have a great year, he only played in about half of the games. So, but it doesn't mean he's trash, you know. Like DeAndre Hunter, I remember last offseason, a lot of people were saying, he's trash. And he was really good for the Hawks in year two. So, you know, like, it's just too. So my I guess that's a roundabout way of saying, like, my Wiseman take is, we have to stick with it. And because of like the way that people are talking about him, like, I want him to be good. Like, I want it so badly, like maybe too much, you know? Yeah. Obviously if there's a great offer and he has to be included, I'll do it. But, and I also think, like, I like the idea of the homegrown talent. Like, I mean, that's what you have with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Like, those are dudes that we developed. And, you know, the idea, and maybe it's a little bit romantic and hard to come by, but if we could do that with Poole and Wiseman, and like you said, like, if we get it, you know, luck into Suggs or something like that, or even, you know, Scotty Barnes or whatever, and then you have your next generation of people, like, that's what being a fan is fun about, you know. Like, and we've also talked about it, like, that's what we loved about the 2015 and 2016 teams, right? Is because like it felt organic, and like we love KD and watching him, but like it was more fun when it was like our guys, you know what I mean? And not,
Yeah.
I mean, and like I mean, you look at the Lakers, like how can you enjoy that? You know, like just bringing in AD and bringing in LeBron, and I mean, and that's why Kobe endures, right? Because he was theirs, right? Like
Hmm.
from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think part of it for maybe, Lakers is like they just favor the glitz and the glamour of the big names more than anything. The homegrown stuff, hey, they don't care as much. They were
Yeah.
totally ready to get rid of Ingram and Ball, and I guess they wanted to keep Kuzma for some reason, but he was the worst out of all of them. Uh, but I also listened to that James Wiseman Monty Pool thing, and I was like pleasantly surprised that he spoke. That I was like, oh my gosh, because he doesn't do much on social media, and I'm like, how's he
No, he
doing?
doesn't.
How's his mentality? Is he like depressed? Is he all right? And the B plus, I was like, okay, this kid is confident, and
What I did like was that he asked Montepool,
yes,
"What do you think I got?"
yeah,
I
and
like that.
yeah, and I feel like Monty Pool gave him like maybe a half grade higher than he probably would have if he wasn't talking
Totally,
to him in person.
totally.
He probably would have given it. He said he gave him a B. He'd probably give him like a C plus
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something. I don't mind the B plus. I was surprised, but I was like, cool. I mean, because it felt like, again, this is just a PR interview. I'm sure Raymond Ritter was like on this Zoom call, like saying like, you can't ask about this, or you can ask only about this and talk about that. And then James, don't say anything like this. But you know, it showed me that if in fact he believes he gets a B plus, that he's not super down about how things went, which is kind of what you don't want. I don't feel like
yeah,
he's an overly cocky, confident guy in that respect, but he's confident enough. And I am of the mindset I'm I want him to succeed just as much as you do. So like I'm of the mindset that if he doesn't get hurt and everybody realizes it, hopefully who thinks about it, if he doesn't get hurt in every time he got hurt, plain and
yeah,
simple, right? And so his per 36 averages were awesome, and it was just like the not fitting in with Steph, the timeline talk, the oh he has bad hands, or oh blah blah blah. I think he's 100% going to be fine, and then you get this vibe from like Warriors Twitter that he's a bust, and I don't necessarily think everyone believes that, but then you just get this vibe that like he's not a good player. But the timelines, they're not going to match up,
yeah,
perfectly, but he's going to be serviceable and good and solid next season. He's going to be a 7-footer who they can throw lobs to, who will be better patrolling the paint, be better at getting rebounds, be better at playing with Steph. He won't be as good as Looney is with Steph, but he also will be able to do more that Looney can't do. He's not going to come in there and be the James Wiseman uh, playing against like the Nets in game one. Although James
yeah.
Wiseman got good stats the first few games. So, and I also think that sometimes I wonder, like, oh, well, considering Oubre was also a uh, offense clogger, lane clogger, eh, maybe if they did move him instead to the bench, you never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And I've said this before too, and I'll just say it on the record. Like my theory on him at the beginning of the season was that there were so many new players on the Warriors and no one had played in so long. There was so much rust and it was such a quick, brief training camp that everybody probably in practice looked discombobulated. They got
yeah,
onto the court, they looked even more discombobulated. But then once they started getting used to each other, the fact that they were veterans and their learning curves were shallower made Wiseman's rawness stand out even more. People are like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we're starting to get it, and like how this team works. And Wiseman's like, what? you know, and so I think that kind of hurt him in some respect. Just like you, like I love homegrown talent, and I want to see. I've talked about this throughout the season. I talked to Wu Bang about this. Like Wiseman is what we've never had, right?
Yeah.
Like even Chris Webber was more of a power forward. Could have been a small ball center a lot, but this guy that we've never had, the best center in our lifetimes with the Warriors. I mean, Draymond Green, obviously small ball center. His accomplishments and accolades would be hard to match, but just as a pure 7-footer, oh my God, like, you kidding me? Like, I really want to see this. I really want to see this work. So,
Yeah.
I see no reason to
I
trade him unless
I
it's a
think
perfect
there's
package, like you
yeah,
said.
totally. And I don't know that package is going to be out there.
Also, we'd be
So
selling a little bit low, right? Like,
totally low. And how would that feel to see, like, are you comfortable seeing him go and be a star somewhere else?
yeah,
I think there's one more thing that I thought about in that interview. And then I also want to talk about like the season too, and Warriors Twitter. So I think one thing he mentioned is that like Monty Poole asked him like, oh, who are you watching in this playoffs? And he mentioned, oh, I've been watching a lot of Embiid, which is great. If you look at Embiid, like at Kansas, he was pretty skinny. He got a lot bigger and, obviously super talented. But I'm hoping he's also watching Ayton, and lots of people have been making, comparisons to Ayton and what he's doing with Phoenix, as the potential for Wiseman in terms of in the short term, right? And I think that's because it's like, and Ayton's really succeeding because he essentially accepted a role, and he's still young. So like his time to be a star is coming. And the thing is, like, you can also be a star role player, right? And I hope that, because like, you're seeing Ayton get a lot of press and accolades. I mean, that's what all the players want too, right? They want to be recognized for what they do. And so, there's different ways to be recognized in the league, and by doing it in the playoffs and playing your part of a good team, like that's one of the best ways to do it. So,
yeah,
but then to your other point too about like, I think about like how the team was, getting adjusted to each other. Warriors Twitter, I think, just needs to have a little bit more perspective about this season, and like in the context of this year and the last 6 months, where we were in the fall, like as in the States and in the league, like it was a mess, right? Like everything was a mess. And so like, and the team came quick together. The draft was like however many weeks before the season actually started. Like Warriors Twitter and other vocal people amongst the fan base have, blasted the front office, blasted Kerr for like, why didn't they know what their plan was going to be? Why didn't they have a better idea? And it's like, okay, we were in a pandemic. You're trying to,
yeah.
you're recovering from a catastrophic like blow to your chances with Clay's injury. You're trying to bring in the number 2 pick who's 19 years old, who hasn't played much. And there's a lot to try to synthesize, and like, sorry, you didn't have a plan. And you're doing it amidst a pandemic when you can't practice. People are very isolated from each other. So like, how is this supposed to happen? How are you supposed to just have the roadmap for everything? And I think people just need to have a little bit perspective of like, just think back 6 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
8 months ago, a year ago, where we were just even in our own lives, like, it's like, these are people too. Like, I mean, part of it is like, I'm kind of still in lockdown in Toronto. So like, that's still fresh in my mind, right? Like having to operate in these like weird circumstances. So
yeah.
I just don't think you can treat it as anything else. And then I just want to say one more thing about like everybody on Warriors Twitter. Like, there's certain segments that always wants to talk about like, chasing wins. And it's like, look at all these dudes who are dropping like flies,
Yeah.
you know, and getting injured. I think they played it right by not quote unquote chasing wins with Steph, right? Like, how would you feel if Steph got a catastrophic soft tissue injury this year?
Yeah.
And you'd be like, it was for nothing. Why did they push him so hard? We didn't have a chance for a championship.
Exactly.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah. I mean, look at all the injuries that have come up. Look at, I mean, and just instead of Kawhi with the knee, you know, but hey, what if it's Steph? You know, what if Steph with his ankle history does what Kyrie did? Right? Like that was rough, man. You saw that? Like it was, it's like,
and like ankle, stop playing it so slow.
It looked like his ankle like touched the ground, man. And that's like at a right ankle rough. Or right angle.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree with you. And like Warriors Twitter, I mean, we all know, like,
just relax, you know,
anything Twitter is terrible. anything Twitter is terrible. Yeah. People are just like venting and like trying to get, you know, people clout chasers, people in all parts of life in the world. That's why I don't really tweet much, you know, like it used to be a great place to like a place for conversation. Yeah, no. But I 100% agree with you, man. Like, and the chasing wins thing, like, I feel like that was so blown out of proportion. And, you know, like all the Kerr hate. I mean, every coach deserves criticism and can be criticized and can be questioned. And I'm not like a Kerr apologist, but there's really nothing to apologize for. I mean, it's a tough season, tough circumstances, and
weird roster.
And to be honest, it was like, hey, we don't have Clay. We went with the guy we want in the draft with Wiseman, and you know, maybe he looked readier than he actually was because no one else knew how to play with each other in training camp, and they were like, let's put him in, and we saw how bad they were overall, right?
Well, and don't forget Looney. We didn't know that Looney was going to hold up over the season.
Yeah, and
like, last time Looney could barely run.
Yeah,
so like, were you going to start him game one? Like, sure, they should have started Chris maybe, but it's like they didn't have a lot of options.
And Looney might not have held up if he started from game one. I mean, Wiseman didn't. Right? So I think people need to kind of chill out a little bit, but I guess most of these big names in Warriors Twitter have made their names by being super reactionary and ridiculous and all that other stuff. But whatever. Maybe I'm just an old man who needs a haircut. Do you have any superstitions before we end this about the lottery? Do you do anything or
no,
whatever?
I mean,
you can do the crumple the balls thing for old time's sake. Pass that on to your son.
Yeah, maybe I should. Man, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to Tuesday. I'm looking forward to the 22nd. Yeah. I'm hyped. I'm so hyped.
All I want is for the Minnesota pick to convey.
Yes.
You know? Because if people are talking about like assets for next year, like say if we get a number 10 pick as the worst case scenario for the Minnesota pick, it's like not only will the Wolves be better next year and the pick will be worse, but then you're still just talking like timeline. Yep. The asset isn't going to be greater than it is now, right? Yep. So just that asset, like you mentioned, just having more tradable pieces is a big deal for me. I don't know. I won't be able to sleep until the lottery is over.
It was Warriors Christmas. I'm telling you, it's Warriors Christmas.
Well, Merry Christmas. Merry Warriors Christmas, man. Yeah. Fingers crossed. Hopefully Santa or whatever people believe in doesn't give us like a pile of coal. All right, well, that is another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to check us out and subscribe, and check us out at oaklandwarriors.com. Hit me up on Twitter at Patrick E. Pino or at Oakland Warriors. And be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society. That's it.
Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time, and go Dubs.